It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill, and today it's actually a fun topic. So if you listen to this podcast or follow us on social media, we talk so much about metabolism and reverse dieting and maintenance and all of those things. Today, we are talking about how not to reverse diet. Now, I think I mentioned in a recent episode that reverse dieting as a topic on social media, I think has gained some traction and it's being talked about more, where I think women are starting to understand that we can't just restrict ourselves into oblivion, right? But now I have women come to me saying, I reverse dieted and it didn't work, or my last one didn't do this, or I reverse dieted and I still can't lose fat. And when we get into the context of it and I start asking questions, I'm like, well, you didn't actually reverse diet. You did your version of a reverse diet, just like women come to us and say, I'm trying to lose weight and I can't. And they're doing their version of a deficit that is going against all of the rules, in air quotes, if you will. So we want to talk about how not to reverse diet, because it truly is such a powerful and incredible tool when it comes to your metabolic health and coming out of dieting phases and just wiping the slate clean from a long, chronic, restrictive dieting history, right? To learn maintenance calories, which is another term that floats around that we'll explain. But a lot of people are now starting to reverse diet and kind of screw it up. So we want to go through the different ways that we have seen, current clients who have previously reverse dieted, unfortunately, some clients who go a little rogue on their own when they're working with us and have to pay the price later for not executing a reverse diet in the smartest or most strategic way. So we have a couple of things. Hopefully we can squeeze all this into one episode, because I'm sure all of these can get Jess and I off on some serious tangents. But the first one being not actually getting to maintenance calories, right? All the women come to me and say, well, I reverse dieted to 1800 and my deficit's still not working. And her deficit's 1600, but she said her maintenance was 1800. It's not really going to yield the results. So Jess, if you want to weigh on this, I have obviously so many thoughts.
Okay, so I guess also I want to differentiate between maintenance, what an optimal maintenance might be for you versus what your body might actually be adapted to. Because I think that there's a differentiation there also, where people think they're at maintenance because they looked up a calculator online that says, oh, based on your weight, height, age, and activity level, your maintenance is 1800 calories. And it's like, okay, well, there's also body composition plays a huge part in this. So a lot of times we are encouraging that this is a muscle building phase. While we're adding calories, we're also adding muscle, because the more muscle we have, the more calories our body burns all the time, right? So I'm 5 feet tall. A calculator online will likely tell me my maintenance calories are like 15 or 1600 calories because I am relatively light and 5 feet tall, right? I can absolutely maintain at 2,400 calories, 2,500 calories. I've been doing that for a long time now. Because I've spent a lot of time putting on muscle mass, and because 3 times a week without fail, I'm lifting very heavy. So my body is utilizing that extra energy. Now, the reason I bring this up when it comes to this topic is it's not that we want to just force feed you to get more and more and more and more food. We are using this as a tool to make future diets as sustainable and painless as possible, right? Like anytime you go into a diet, there's going to be some hunger, right? Your body is using the energy that it is stored in your fat. So you're going to have hunger cues a little bit. But how much more comfortable would it be if I could adapt my body up to 2,400 and then go into a fat loss phase? I want to diet. I want to lean out at 1,900 calories or 1,800 calories, as opposed to if my body is adapted to 1,800 and I've been living there for a couple years, I might have to cut down to 1,600. And then when my body adapts to that, I'm going to have to cut down to 1,500 or 1,400. And the more and more I cut down now, the more restrictive it is. So it's hard to be consistent with. And the harder it is to actually get in nutrients that my body needs. So at those low calorie amounts. So when we talk about the intention behind it, again, it's like finding that balance of I'm going to push a client as high as I can without them gaining any inches. And also they might help me find that max point, because I'm not going to have them to a place where they need to like bodybuilders wake up in the middle of the night just to get extra calories or force feed at night, right? We want to find that comfortable balance point. But for every client that I've ever had, that amount for grown women is going to be over 2,000 calories. And I think a lot of women are very fearful that like, I've maintained at 1,800, so I'm scared to go past that, right? So I went off on a tangent already, but that's kind of like the intention here behind the why. So yeah, a lot of women don't actually get to what that max is for them because they see the scale climb. Now, what we want to do, right? Like this ends up backfiring. So you see the scale climb and then you're like, oh, I need to cut calories back down, right? You end up not optimizing the time spent at that high calorie amount. So you're right back into the cycle that you were at to begin with. Now, how to combat that is to look at different data points. So the scale may go up during a successful muscle building phase. If you are building the right type of tissue, if you're putting those calories towards muscle mass by eating plenty of protein and strength training, your inches should not be going up. So if you're looking at inches, your inches should be staying about the same. Sometimes they actually go down for people while they're building muscle. They're also losing fat. But your inches should stay the same or go down. Your strength should be going up. And then the scale may stay the same or it may slightly climb. And if a client's weight increases by 5 to 8 pounds within a 3 or 4 month build phase, I am not freaking out about it. If their inches are the same, great. We've put on some muscle mass and they've probably retained some water. They have more food in their belly, right? As soon as we go into that deficit, that weight is going to fall right off in the form of body fat and that initial water weight that was stored, right? So, okay, that's my rant. Go ahead, Jill. What do you have to add?
Oh, that's the end of the episode. Thanks, guys, for listening. No, no, yeah, it's the scale. I think that's a huge factor in that process, right? Because, like Jess said, you know, somebody will get to 1,800 calories and, think, well, I'm maintaining here, so I'm good. And it's like, well, of course you're maintaining there. Whatever you give your metabolism for an extended period of time, you're going to eventually maintain there because that's what your body learned to do. So we are essentially training your metabolism to maintain higher as we go, which is why we're doing small and strategic increases along the way. And like Jess said, I think that so many women, when they try to execute reverse diets on their own, tend to not be successful or not get everything out of it that they can and really maximize their metabolism, their ability of their metabolism, because the scale goes up and they freak out. And we have to focus on a lot of other things, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail, but letting the scale dictate whether you increase calories or not is the biggest problem. Because if you're weighing in once a week and it's every Monday and every Saturday and Sunday, you are, you know, more fun foods, higher sodium, eating out more, less water, or not as good of sleep, whatever, all of these variables that can play into the scale, you're delaying your reverse for no reason. And I'm fully agreeing that it can be extremely difficult, especially if you are not a coach or somebody with experience, to be objective of your own journey and progress, because you're granular, you're picking yourself apart, you're weighing every day, right? So you're looking at this just a little bit too zoomed in, right? So it's not, reverse dieting is meant to get you to your maintenance, but specifically for us, Jess and I were just talking about this, it's to push that metabolic threshold a little bit more than we might typically for just the average person looking for health and longevity, because we want to maximize what your metabolism can do when we then go into a fat loss phase, so that you see the best results, the most efficient results, and that they're easier to get because you don't have to bring your calories quite as low.
But you're setting up future you for success is like the entire point. It is not just eat more food, right? If we just said just eat more food and didn't give parameters around the nutrients and the strength training and stuff, you would gain body fat like the rest of America, right? So yeah, using the scale to dictate success and or to make you pause. I mean, we have clients that we talk off ledges every week where we're like, time out. I know that the scale's scary. Now let's zoom out and look at your data. Wow. It's been 2 months. You're eating 600 calories more a day and you are not gaining any inches, like this and this and this. And they have one day where their pants feel a little snug and they feel a little bloated and they freak out like this process isn't working. It's like, can we please zoom out? Your inches haven't increased at all, right? If you're doing this right, that's something that you're going to notice. Now, I want to give a caveat to that. When we have more food in our body stores more water. There's physically more food in our belly. So this is like the like bodybuilders who are lean or supermodels on their photo shoot day, right? They have less stored water. They look extra lean. That's not how they walk around in normal life. As soon as they refeed like a normal person, your body is going to maintain some of that. So also, I think comparing apples to apples is important. So like if a client is really stressed out because, well, when I was at 1,200 calories, my pants fit a little bit better. And it's like, okay, but right now you haven't really gained inches. You feel a little bit more full, right? You feel more full in the belly. But you're at 2,000 calories, not gaining any inches. You're way stronger. Compare apples to apples. Next time after a cut, when we go into that, then compare that body to your low calorie body. Don't compare your high calorie maintenance body to your lowest calorie body that's not sustainable. If that makes sense. Like that's like comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah. And then the other thing is not differentiating between reverse and actual maintenance. So I'll have somebody say, well, I did a reverse diet and I got up to 2,100 calories and my deficit still didn't work. And when I dive into it, they're like, I'm like, well, how long were you at maintenance? It's basically like, well, I hit 2,100 calories on Saturday, so I thought it was fine. It's like, hold on.
You have to live there.
Been dieting for 10 years at 1,200 calories and you think one day or 1 week or even 1 month at 2,100 calories is going to undo all of these years of your metabolism adapting. Now, I'm not saying because you dieted for 10 years that it's going to take 10 years to fix it. It's not at all. And we're giving you the tools to speed that process up. But ultimately, reversing is just the actual process of increasing calories to get to maintenance. The time at maintenance is what is actually fixing that metabolic adaptation and upregulating your metabolism, not the reverse in and of itself. Reversing is just the strategic way to get you to this next step in this next phase. And it's like, cool, now we're at maintenance. Now we live here. Reverse dieting is just low calorie adaptation to a higher calorie adaptation. So way too many people reverse for a week or two, or they set this very specific timeline of I reverse for 8 weeks and then I do this for 2 weeks and then I go into a deficit. And it's like, no, everyone's body is different. You have to go off of what your body is actually telling you. If you are losing inches or maintaining it beautifully and sleep is improving, energy is getting better, you got your libido back, hormone things are starting to improve, gut health is improving, it's probably not the time to just pivot into a deficit. Your body is literally saying, thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
More. And then you're like, when are we shifting gears? And it's like, why are you doing that when your body is really happy right now?
Like it's clearly healing from the inside out if that's happening. Right. And again, the how we do this is very important. While we're at those high calorie amounts, we are adding, I can't stress this enough, we are trying to add as much lean muscle tissue as possible. We are working on sleep and stress inputs. We are practicing adding nourishment that feels good and not restricting and getting plenty of nutrients and protein and fiber. Because when we cut calories down, it's way harder to get that, right? It's easier to fill your body with nutrients when you have more caloric wiggle room. So we're practicing that in an easier environment to practice it. So that by the time we cut a couple hundred calories out, now that's just part of your life. That's part of your routine. So we're also really, really conscious of the habit part of this, the behavioral component. This is not just a calories in, calories out game. This is hey, how can we make this sustainable forever for you?
Yeah, 100%. And I explain that a lot in detail on consult calls. Like, hey, I talk about this reverse diet being step one, but this isn't just, I need to get your calories up. This is all encompassing of we are building muscle. I am auditing why your body is responding the way that it is to the inputs that you're giving it, and what needs to be optimized first so that I can fill the right gaps initially for a really solid foundation. And then we're looking behaviorally. Do you have a meltdown every time the scale fluctuates? Do you have immense food guilt of what you indulged in on Saturday, even if you were within air quotes caloric parameters that we set for you, right? Like we have to look at all those things, because if you have a meltdown every time you look at bread because you think carbs are terrible and they make you feel awful and X, Y, and Z, or the scale went up 0.5 and nothing is working and your body is, your hormones are fucked up, then we need to go deeper into the mental side of things too. So that's a lot of stuff. And that's like not even in our notes, just a little bit of a tangent. But ultimately, that's the other with reverse dieting is people see it as just changing calories. And there's a lot more on our end as coaches, at least. I can't speak to any program out there that uses reverse dieting, but we're looking so deeply at the behavioral and lifestyle components to make sure Do you know what it means to eat off of your intuition? Do you know what 80% hunger feels like when you should stop eating, when you should start? Do you know how to eat mindfully? Like, there's so many things that we're looking at as coaches within Fueled that we're going into. That was just
one of my favorite things is when women are like, without even realizing that this is what's happening, women are realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm eating more and the scale hasn't changed. Like, this is wild. I'm not thinking about what I can't have when I'm at dinner with my family and friends. I just went on a cruise and I ate vegetables with my meal because I feel good, not because I feel like I have to. Like, all those little things are happening along the way, even though they're not in these clients' minds. Physique is the objective, right? And it's like these health habits change and it makes, then physique comes as a side effect. So, okay, we already I touched on this on number one, but increasing calories without adequate protein or strength training is a problem. It is a problem. Again, I personally like to call it a muscle building phase, not just a reverse diet, because if these two things are absent, you are going to put those extra calories towards body fat, which we don't want to do, right? So adequate protein and strength training are requirements, whether you are reverse dieting and trying to put on muscle, or whether you are dieting and you're trying to preserve as much muscle as possible. These two things are non-negotiables: protein and strength training.
And any phase, anything you're doing or focusing on in life, dieting, muscle building, maintenance, those should be your primary focuses. But especially when we are adding calories back into your day, we want to shuttle those calories somewhere effective. We don't just want to be sedentary and add more calories. One, without increasing activity, we're going to have a hard time increasing the threshold of your metabolism because we're not being active enough. And two, muscle is expensive tissue. Now we're giving it all of this energy and saying, hey, put this here, right? So you're going to get more faster physique change. And it's not physique change that you might see initially because we're just adding muscle and maybe not dropping body fat a ton initially. Body recomposition is a thing, but it is a very slow process. And I say slow is relative, slower than your typical dopamine hit of going in a fat loss phase and seeing the scale go down and seeing things change. But ultimately, eating more and not training properly is such a wasted opportunity because then you diet down and you kind of look the same as you did the last dieting phase. But if you get your calories to maintenance and you are really pushing some weights and really utilizing progressive overload and shuttling those calories somewhere effective, the next time you diet, you could have a completely different physique, look like
it's so much easier. And your body maintains for you through seasons of, oh no, I'm sick and I can't work out for a couple of weeks. Like your muscle acts as insurance during those times. So put on as much muscle as possible. You will not see it. Even if you think like, oh, I don't want to put on more muscle because my legs feel bulky when I do that. You know what? That's honestly, it's the body fat that's covering up those muscles that we're building. It's still important to build the muscles. Once we lean out, you're not going to feel that way at all. Muscle does not take up a lot of space on your body. If a client in 1 year, this is a lofty goal, but some clients do it and it's the coolest before and after pictures ever. If a client could put on 10 pounds of muscle in a year and that was our only focus, their physique would look completely different. Once they maybe spend 2 months in a cut at the end of that. And
their pictures sitting next to each other, they're the exact same weight often because of body recomposition where fat came down slightly, but adding 10 pounds of muscle, they've now replaced that. And
they look way leaner. They look way leaner at the same weight or even heavier. Okay. The next one, how to not reverse diet. Being inconsistent with your intake. So either mixing in low calorie days or not tracking some days and accidentally under eating because we're busy, we miss meals, we skip breakfast, whatever. This is not problematic health wise, right? But if you have a specific goal of, okay, I want to at some point go into a fat loss phase and you have this hodgepodge of caloric intake, what ends up happening is, what's your norm? What do you do most of the time, right? I have one client, and she is really aware of her intake and stuff. So I feel like this is a good example. But during her Mondays through Thursdays, her target was like 2,300 calories. Every weekend, she's a soccer coach. She would be on the field all day with her girls. Her calories were so low. We just had to have an expectation stock of like, hey, when we go into a deficit, like every weekend, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, that's 3 out of 7 days. That's almost half your week. Your calories are at 1,400 calories. even though our target in our head is 2,200 calories, 22 is not what your body's actually adapted to, right? So we need to take that average and figure it out, right? If your body's actually only adapted to 1,750, when we go to cut, we might have to cut lower than you think we might have to, right? So having that data is great because you can go off of it. Again, if you don't have the data, if there are untracked days, your body's going to give you information. If you think you are crushing 2,200 calories a day and then you drop down to 1,700 and nothing happens, there's a good chance maybe you weren't actually eating as much as you thought you were, right? So just be really consistent and strategic during any of these phases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this is probably one of the most common ones, and it leads to frustration often in a reverse diet because it's a similar concept to like a woman's like, I've been dieting all this time. And, I ask, what's your calorie intake? And she's like, well, my MyFitnessPal's set to 1,200. I'm like, I don't give a shit what my MyFitnessPal's set to. What are you eating? Like,
what's your actual inputs? What's your actual average?
What you're doing doesn't matter. It's what you're actually doing. And it's the same with reversing is people get frustrated and say, well, I've been reversing for 8 months and nothing's happening. I'm like, you haven't been reversing for 8 months. You've been eating 1,700 calories for 8 months and I'm trying to get you to increase, right? So I tell every single woman that comes into our program, they say, how long does a reverse take? And I tell them, there is no set timeline. It depends what your starting point is. It depends on your life. It depends how your compliance and what pace you want to move. There's way too many variables for me to say, this is how long a reverse takes. I can tell you about how long I want you to sit at maintenance for based on your
once you get there.
But I have no idea how long the reverse takes because ultimately that's really going to be up to you. And I tell them that the thing that drags the reverse diet out the most, more than anything, is lack of compliance to increasing the calorie intake. Now, that could be because life is busy, because it feels like a lot of food and you're not used to it mentally, because you're afraid to eat more, because digestively it doesn't feel good yet. There really isn't, I'm not saying all of those reasons are wrong. Sometimes a reverse, I just move slower through it with a client, and I'm okay with that as long as they're okay with that, right? There's really no right or wrong answer. But if you find that you're making excuses and I'm busy and you're like, but I ate 2,000 calories these 3 days. I'm like, yeah, but those 1,300 calorie days, we're kind of just spinning our wheels in the same spot here. So it's really important to understand that, I will give clients, hey, this was actually your average for this week. And I don't want everyone to go run and say, well, I had 3,000 Saturday and 1,200 Tuesday, but my average was here, so I'm good, because that defeats the purpose. We need consistency, but overall, I'm showing them their averages to say, hey, even though mentally you feel like you're eating 2,000 plus, most of the time this is
actual average
actually landing, and that's still too low, and we're not getting the metabolic adaptation that we want. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I see hold things up.
And we use like a consistency audit type sheet for ourselves. You guys could do, or for our clients, you guys could do this for yourselves, where you just actually look at the data, average calories, average proteins. Anytime a client says, oh my gosh, I don't like how I feel in my pants or my whatever, this results aren't working. And usually it's after like a week of consistency. First of all, it takes time. My first question is, okay, what were your average calories and your average proteins this past couple weeks? And did you lift? And then they're like, well, I don't really know my average proteins, or my average proteins were only 80 grams a day. And I'm like, okay, there you go. We have our answers, right? Like, let's look at the data before we allow emotions to, like, let's logic ourselves out of the emotional component of it, strictly looking at data. And that's going to give us information.
Yep. And then the next thing is using reverse dieting as just full on YOLO. Well, I'm eating more food. And listen, I'm giving this opportunity to you and your metabolism so that you eat more food and have more flexibility and see all of the beautiful things that you can eat and enjoy without having to worry about a ton of weight gain. However, if you just take it and go full YOLO and call it a bulk phase or whatever you want, you're going to be really upset when it comes time to lose fat, or you're going to feel really physically uncomfortable in your clothes because you probably did add a little bit too much body fat in that process. I had a woman in my DMs recently who said she worked with a coach and reverse dieting just doesn't work for her. And it was like pulling teeth getting information from her. But I finally got it out that she increased like 100 calories every week on the money, 7 weeks in a row. And she's like, I gained all this weight. And I'm like, it was just a standard increase 100 calories every week? Did they look at your body's biofeedback? Like, I don't understand.
Did you eat enough protein? Did you strength train, or are we just increasing calories? Again, I think that, and I think it can be a fine line, right? Like, it's part of what we do is try to help clients find that balance, because a lot of the women we work with have spent years restricting or thinking certain foods are off limits. So it's this balancing act of, hey, we want you to learn that if you have extra caloric wiggle room, it's okay to have a cookie or like whatever the thing is that you thought was off limits. You don't have to have off limit foods. But there's also this, we want most of our food to come from really nutrient dense sources that are going to allow us to feel really good. From a habit standpoint, from a sugar craving standpoint, from all these different health standpoints. But then also from this sustainability thing, like when we're going through a build phase, the goal or a reverse, the goal is build as much muscle as possible while adding as little body fat as possible, right? And then when we go into a deficit, our goal is lose as much fat as possible and maintain as much muscle as possible, which a lot of people also get wrong. A lot of people just want to drop weight and then they lose muscle because they're not eating enough protein. So the goal is we need to make sure that it's not a YOLO thing. If it turns that way, again, it's one of those things where people are like, well, this process isn't working. And I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about your proteins. Let's talk about your strength training inputs. And then they're like, oh, shoot. Okay, cool. And then they start to reel it in. And suddenly this reverse diet now feels like, oh, okay, I'm just maintaining. I'm not actually gaining anything when done right.
Absolutely. And then we kind of touched on this, but I'll just hit it home as like a specific thing to not do when you reverse diet is prioritizing the scale over body composition. And, we explained Jess's client example about, adding muscle and being the same weight, but, totally different physiques and all of that. So you can't just use the scale to determine, do I increase my calories or not? Because you're probably going to stay in the same spot forever. Or if you aren't strength training and the scale is going up, there's too many variables to consider here anyway, but you should be lifting regardless. But there's too many reasons for a scale to fluctuate in terms of water retention, cycle, inflammation, sickness, too much water, not too much water, a lot more water, less water, more sodium, eating out more, alcohol causes water retention, right? There's all of these other variables that our bodies are dynamic, right? The scale, we aren't just a flat number all of the time. Even if you do all of your inputs are, air quotes, the same every day, you'll still have some fluctuation. But if you obsess over the number on the scale instead of your inches, your progress photos, how your clothes fit, how you feel, your relationship with food, is your sleep improving, all of those other markers, you're going to kind of like self-sabotage in the process unless you're working with a coach, obviously, to move through that. But it's really important to take measurements because like Jess said, we could have a client add 3 to 8 pounds in a reverse diet, depending on how long it is. And their inches stay exactly the same. And that's a huge...
Or they look leaner. We have one client right now, another coach that I'm helping coach. And she's like, oh, this client is really upset because she's gained 7 pounds. And I'm like, okay, let's see her pictures. She looks like she's lost 5 pounds, right? Because she's absolutely gained the right type of weight. But it's a reprogramming in our brains of like, hey, let's look at this from an objective standpoint, right? Let's look at pictures. Wow, you're stronger. Wow, your sleep's getting better. Wow, your energy, all these things are pointing towards healthy progress. She's doing this in the right way. And now we have to educate on the why behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of touched on that. The next one ties into this, not looking at your biofeedback to determine when to increase calories. People ask me all the time, like what the perfect formula is for reverse dieting. And my answer is there isn't one. There will be a week or a couple of weeks that I won't increase. And there are some clients that I increase 50 calories, 200 calories. It really depends on where we're at in the process. And I feel like people think I'm like gatekeeping when I say that. And I'm like, I really can't give you a blanket answer because I look at so many different pieces of data when I decide what the next step is for a client. In any phase of the process, but especially the first reverse when I'm learning their body and getting their metabolism to adapt, because that's typically the hardest part of the process. And it's just adjusting based on how your body responds. But again, if you blindly follow calorie increases that ignore all of the data, you're either going to stall out and stay stuck in the same place, or you're going to increase and gain body fat that you didn't want to gain.
And when we say biofeedback, what we're talking about is information your body is giving us that doesn't have to do with the scale, right? So sleep, energy, libido, hunger, recovery, strength, all of those things are things that we are looking at during this process. When Jill is talking about, well, everybody takes a different amount of time. That is so true. In an ideal world, I'll tell you, just so you guys have in your head, like, okay, this is what it might take. My expectations with clients are, hey, if we're doing all of this right, if we're doing this and you want to get through it as fast as possible, my goal is maybe it takes us a month to get up to find what your maintenance is. Again, based on your starting point, if you're coming to us eating plenty of calories, Great. We're at maintenance. Now we're working on habits. Once we get there, I'm hanging there for anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks, typically. Again, if I have somebody who has, and we've had lots of women like this who are in their 50s or 60s and they've been dieting for 30 years at 1,200 calories, they might need 6 months. They might need longer, right? But for most people, I would say 8 to 12 weeks works beautifully when we then go to drop calories back down. But another big factor, in addition to the biofeedback, is the mental factor. If I have somebody and it's like, okay, your inches haven't gone up, you're feeling stronger, everything looks good from a data standpoint, but she's freaking out because the scale went up a pound, I might say, okay, we'll hang tight because you seem very stressed out. Let's hang tight and get used to it. Let's get used to this place that we're at. You're telling me you feel pretty full. So fullness is a factor. Mentally, if we're feeling comfortable with increasing faster, some clients are like, rip the Band-Aid off and get me there as fast as possible because I want to get this over with and I don't want to say get to the fat loss phase because that should not be where we're spending most of our life. Most of our life should be spent at maintenance. But a lot of clients have that mentality of get me there as fast as possible. And honestly, it is refreshing when that happens because it's so much less painful versus fighting that scale at week to week. It tends to drag it out and make the process way longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing is, and we kind of touched on this earlier, where you say you're reverse dieting because you think you're eating a lot of food, but you're not actually strategically increasing your calories. And if you're just maintaining at a slightly higher deficit because you're afraid to increase your calories, you're not actually reversing. And it almost puts you in a worse position because it's not enough to support your metabolism and build muscle and see physique change, but it's also not enough to be in a fat loss phase. So you're in this weird gray area where you're getting absolutely really nothing out of it because you're also not giving your body enough nutrients it needs when you come to me for hormone issues, or I'm bloated all the time, or food sensitivities are starting to creep in, or perimenopause symptoms. You're not giving your body enough to feel safe and relax and eliminate some of those problems, but you're also not seeing the fat loss that you want. So it would serve you to just honestly pick a lane and stay in it, really go into fat loss and just full send into a deficit or fully see the reverse diet through. But this gray area is where so many women get stuck, but probably most of the time. And then they're making this connection in their head that this thing doesn't work for me, but they're not actually doing that.
They're not doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah, stay out of the limbo. I think that's it for how not to reverse diet. But ultimately, your body is going to tell you exactly what it needs next and what it likes and what it doesn't like. Reverse dieting is not this linear process, just like fat loss isn't. You lose X number of pounds each week of the phase. You have to have data to monitor. Reverse dieting without tracking is tricky. It can be done. But ultimately, our job as coaches and what we tell everyone is that the more data we have, the easier it is to manipulate because we know what data we need to look at, what lever we need to pull, what needs to be changed or optimized. And that's the fastest way to get from point A to point B. But ultimately, again, you don't have to track. There's just a little bit more guessing involved, and your timeline might be a little bit longer, which most people aren't okay with. So I feel like I could do a whole nother episode on tracking. And I tell people tell me all the time, you tried tracking and I stopped. So I'm sure you'll see that episode in the very near future because that's been a common conversation. But ultimately,
your body ultimately gives us the information on what's happening and how it's adapting, right? So again, if you're somebody who thinks, you know what, I'm eating plenty and I eat a lot of protein and I strength train, so I don't need to go into this maintenance phase they're talking about because I've been living it. And then you go and you try to cut down to 1,700 calories and nothing happens. You probably weren't eating as much as you thought, right? And then you try to cut down to 16 and nothing happens. Okay, you probably weren't eating, right? So your body is giving you that feedback. Another thing is, again, a lot of women I think are just resistant to the idea of gaining anything. And it's like gaining muscle. Oh my gosh, it makes your future self so much easier to stay lean. But if you are in that headspace of being nervous, what's your alternative is often my question to people, because a lot of times the women who are coming to us are coming out of diets and saying, I've plateaued, I'm doing everything right, and I'm not seeing any change, and I'm at 1,400 calories, and I'm working out 6 days a week, and this and that. And it's like, okay, if you are not losing body fat at 1,400 calories, what are you going to do? Keep cutting lower and lower and lower and just become malnourished? Because if you would like to be able to start back at square one and respond like the first time you ever dieted, you might need to go through this uncomfortable phase, which oftentimes is actually healing mentally for a lot of people. So even though it sounds scary, if you're at a sticking point and your body is really plateaued and you know that you are being consistent in all those things, this might be the healthiest route for you. And on the other end of it, there's a lot of really cool things that happen. But usually it can be a little bit of a scary thing if you've never done it before. So I highly recommend working through it with somebody who knows what data to look for.
Love it. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I feel like that was a fun topic to cover, and we were instantly like, yes, we can talk so much about this. But again, as reverse dieting starts to become more popular or more known in the space, if you will, just make sure that you're executing it properly and fully, or hiring a coach that knows what biofeedback to look for and doesn't just give blanket suggestions on how to do it. So hope that was helpful for this episode, and we will see you guys next time.